All right, all right, all right, all right. What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? So here we go back into it. So these two books that I'm going to be talking about is one is the Maximillien de LaFayette, The Origin of the Name of God and His True Identity. And then I'm going to do the history of the Yoruba. The only reason why I'm doing these two books is because the notes that I took in these books from these books were short, and the reason why is because I'm going to talk about a lot of this stuff in the future anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But let's see. So, let me get comfortable. Let me get comfortable. All right. So, all right. The first thing that I took a note of was in the prologue of the book, and it says he says Maximillien writes that the name of God Yahweh, His attributes, and extraordinary supernatural powers and deeds were borrowed from pagan gods the Israelites worshiped before they created their own God, Yahweh, who centuries later became the God of the Christians and the Muslims. So I thought that was pretty interesting because that kind of gave me an insight of, the name of God, Yahweh. Then it gave me the idea of how it came from pagans and how, Christians to Muslims got involved with the different name of Yahweh. So helps me out with that. Um, the next thing that I found interesting from this book when I read it was he says the real name of God, Allah's terminology, Yahweh was a common Phoenician name. So Yahweh is a common Phoenician name. So just throwing that out there, you can find who Yahweh is and the ideas and the beliefs associated with Yahweh from the Phoenicians. I thought that was interesting. Let's see. Let's look at the next one. Here we go. It says, let's see. Let's see. We got the Jewish, Hebrew, Judaic, Israelite, Jehovah, Yahweh. Yahweh dash Elohim was the Phoenician god El Baal, Baal Hadad, also called Yah, Yeha, and Yehi, Yehai in Phoenician, and also was the Anunnaki Sumerian god El Inki or Ea. So that's where some people get the idea if they read the book from Maximillien, they'll tell you that, Ea and Inki was the same as Yahweh. So that's pretty interesting. Hold on, let me grab something real quick. All right. All right, let's see. All right. Moving along. The Phoenician El became Eli in Aramaic, and Jesus on the cross before relinquishing his last breath called his heavenly father Eli. That's pretty interesting. So you could just see use different names for their gods, their beliefs, and so on and so forth. It's just not, saying one is right over the other. It's just saying, hey, this is what it tells you according to the actual ancient text, right? Or at least the interpretation of the text. All right, so let's see. Hold on, it's got to load up because I'm on this Kindle Scribe. Let's see. The plural of Ele in Aramaic and Hebrew is Elohim, my gods, my lords, and my masters. The Arabs obliged, and the Christian and Muslim Arabs transformed El into Elahai, Ilahai, and Allah. So you don't have to argue about which God you want to believe in, because that right there should tell you enough what you need to know. It says numerous Sumerologists, and I'll tell you, this is the interesting part. The only individual that I know personally that was coined a Sumerologist was Samuel Noah Kramer. There are other individuals who do, study Sumerology and so on and so forth, but Samuel Noah Kramer was actually coined as a Sumerologist. So that's pretty interesting. Most of them are known as Assyriologists. But it says right here, numerous Sumerologists and Assyriologists believe that Yah, referring to Yahweh, originated from the Assyrio-Babylonian word Yahu, which was the name of an Assyrian Babylonian god. So that tells you how Yahweh or Yah originated. That's not me saying it. It's just what this book is. If you want to read the book, it's right there. You can see it for yourself. I'm just giving you some of the information to hopefully get you wanting to buy the book and read it. Here's another one. This is very interesting, because when I hear the word Lord and then I hear Baal, you'll understand what I'm about to say. So the Jewish Bible, Old Testament, confirmed that Yahweh was called Baal, name of a Phoenician god by some Israelites. Okay, so when I hear people arguing about that there's only one way that I identify who God is, obviously haven't read the ancient texts, or let alone even decided to read the Bible in its full capacity, because they would know this if they read the Bible like they're supposed to. But the problem is they only read the things that make them feel good, and that's why they create these narratives that they have. I'm not trying to create a narrative. I'm just trying to share what I can. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is all interesting to me. Let's see. Right. So let's see. Hold on. I gotta get to another highlight that pressed the wrong button. Anybody that has a Kindle, I'm telling you, these things are worth it. Okay, here we go. It's got to load now. All right. So the Phoenicia was the original source for the Hebrew Yahweh's imagery in the Bible and the cherubim throne. So take that how you want to. Goes on to talk about the Phoenician gods seated on the winged sphinx thrones of Byblos. Now, what's interesting to me is that I always tell people this, what I'm saying? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So just because you see something depicted doesn't mean that's what everybody looks and sees it as. Everybody can have their own interpretation of that depiction, which I think is very interesting, because if you talk to other people and see what they talk about or what they learn, there's no arguments on, the possibilities that's out there, because there's no absolutes out there yet. You know what I'm saying? Then he says, oh yeah, here we go. Because this is the part with Kramer. He says Kramer on when Enki became EA about 2500 BC. Akkadians introduced the name EA for Enki. So Akkadians introduced the name EA for Enki. And this can be backed up on page 3, Samuel Noah Kramer and John Meyer, Myths of Enki and the Crafty God. I actually have that book too. It's pretty interesting book. That's where I actually read. I think that's the same one that I read where Enki and Enlil aren't always known as brothers, but one is known as a father and the other one is known as his son. And I can tell you, according to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, that is also verified through there. They're not always known as brothers. That's just some idea that some people hold on to, because that's what some of the texts say, but not all texts agree with that. Here we go. Another thing that I found interesting, he says that Yahweh's different name forms found in the Hebrew Bible. It is not certain, however, that Yahweh was the oldest form of a name. A short form, Yah, appears 25 times in the Old Testament. Okay. So that's pretty interesting. And that's about it for that book. Let me see. So that was information that I learned from Maximillien de LaFayette. I'll be getting into more names about the origins of the name of God when I get into what Jeff Benner talks about, because he has a book that's called His Name is One, and he actually gives a lot. And then I also have let's see, I have this book here called The Rose Book of Bible Charts, Maps, and Timelines. Bam, bam, bam. This book's pretty dope because it gives you, let me see if I can find it real quick and put this Kindle up here by my printer. Let's see, because I'll be going over every single book that I own, that I personally own. That's why I'm doing this, is that I'm trying to build, when I have these discussions on Spaces or any kind of discussion with anybody on Clubhouses or whatever the case may be, I hear a lot of times where people would say that I'm incorrect about stuff. Well, I can never be incorrect if I'm reading. You know what I'm saying? I'm reading books. I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm not saying what I've read is right. What I'm saying is that this is what I've read. So if you haven't read that and you didn't know at the time of me explaining it, then you have no reason to tell me that I'm wrong about anything until you actually do your due diligence. Because guess what I have? But like I said, I had this book right here. And I don't know if you can see it, but it does say the names of gods in here. Name the names of God, and it gives you the meaning, the application, the Bible reference, and comments as far as how to pronounce it and stuff like that. So I have them. I have a book right here which I'll be going into. That's why I didn't want to get too deep with Maximillien de LaFayette's book, but he talked about some stuff that I thought it was interesting that was backed up by reading other books like this one right here. So, and also one of my favorite Bibles is the New Jerusalem Bible. And the reason why is because this Bible actually, I mean, you just got to do your research on it. I mean, shit, it just gives you everything that you need. So, I mean, telling me that I'm wrong, don't tell me I'm wrong. Tell that person that wrote that book wrong. Get mad at the person that read that book. Don't get mad at the person that's sharing, like the saying goes, don't shoot the messenger, right? Because I can tell you right now, 9 times out of 10, half the people I have arguments with, they haven't read half the shit that I've read. But so here's the notes for the history of a history of the Yoruba. I did this one before, but like I said, I'm trying to have a recording of all my notes because it helps me. What I like to do is I like to go back and look at all my books daily, and not all my books, but I pick a book daily, and I like to go back and read the notes that I took on. And what I mean by that is, so you see all these little tabs right here. Well, I'm going through one of these books right now. I put little tabs on there. And what I do is I put tabs on my little books, and I go back and then I highlight them. So that way it makes me remember what I tabbed up. So basically all I'm doing is refreshing my memory every single day based on the book that I've read. I pick a book from my library. I take an hour out the day or 2 hours out the day, and I go back and read everything that I highlighted, because nobody can remember everything, but I can kind of remember based off what I do. So buying this Kindle Scribe helps out a lot too, because now I'm writing it down. It's making me, remember this stuff. So when I say something I'm telling you, it's all because of what I've read, and all I'm trying to do is just share what I've read. So a history of the Yoruba people. So one thing that I found interesting in the book was that he says, and this is from, I don't know how to say his name correctly, so I'll probably butcher it, but it's Adebanji Akintoye. So I'm not sure if I said that right, but you can see it right there. You got the page of the picture of the front book. So interesting. So in this book, the supreme being spear was so far above the humans' world that the humans could not worship or relate directly with him. Now, this was a description of their type of gods and where their God is supposed to be at. But this sounds like to me the Tower of Babel, right? I'm gonna read again. The supreme being sphere was so far above the humans' world that the humans could not worship or relate directly with him. Okay, what does the Tower of Babel initially mean? They try to build a tower to reach the heavens, right? You just changing out words, right? Just that's all we're doing, or that's what most people do, is just change out words, right? Here we go. The second heavenly sphere was in close proximity, which was home to all the gods known as Imo. they had an hierarchy. Now this makes sense to me too, because um, when I read the descriptions of where heaven is, or where these places where these gods are to be, a lot of times you get some descriptions that they are outside of Earth's atmosphere, which would make them alien or extraterrestrial in nature, or they were close by, which would be sometimes when you look at like the Greek mythology, like uh, Mount Olympus, and all that, the gods being on the mountains and stuff. So right there, that can be, that's where the gods resided at. And if you look at any of the famous monuments, from the pyramids to the Gobekli Tepe to Machu Picchu and so on and so forth, they're all on, high ground. So kind of makes sense. Um, but I get into more about that later. I just wanted to point it out that he does talk about this in the book. Now, the total number of gods varied, but he gives the number 401 as the commonest amount of gods. So 401 is about the total number of gods that can be found repeatedly. I find this interesting because that's 401 gods. It means you're going to have 401 stories, plus or minus, right? And I say plus or minus because sometimes you might have the same story, or you might have two people that might have two different stories of that same story. So it just goes all over the place. But it's interesting just to know that there's a number of 401 gods. And I'm going to quote this part. It says, even the most senior Yoruba gods, Orisanla, became Obatala in the name of Oduduwas. I know I butchered those names up, but all you have to do is just Google the Yoruba gods and you can get the basic names for yourself. But the ancient deity probably originated known as Elephant, and his name changed to Abalufan. So just like with the origin of the name of God and his true identity, you can see that in the Yoruba people and their Yoruba culture and the Yoruba religion, that their gods had multiple names for one God. This is not something that's just been carried out in Mesopotamia or so on and so places. Every god had a different version name for that. So I pointed that out because that's interesting. Because, like I said, the origin of the name of God and his true identity. Well, who is the true identity for the Yoruba people? Well, it does say probably originally known as, right? So when I hear the word probably, that doesn't mean that it makes it an absolute, and it definitely doesn't mean that that name stops there. That I need to research for more. So, you know, all of these different names can confuse anybody, basically, right? I can confuse myself trying to figure out who these gods are. You can confuse yourself, and most of the time, I tell people all the time, you're just trying to figure out what one God's name is. You're going to have to learn about at least 50 of them. So, that's interesting. Another thing that's in this book that I found interesting was one of Sango's powers was the power to create lightning. Well, we have lightning gods all over the world, right? There's no denying that. And I don't even have to get into it right now because we know that there are different gods with lightning. So the Yoruba has that. So that should tell you that, any man that could predict lightning, maybe he was deified as a god. I don't know, right? But let's see. So most people know this uh about the slave trade and stuff like that, and we got the idea. So he talks about that in his book. But what I found interesting in this book is because this is an argument that a lot of people would make when they say that, well, Africans, they even had slaves back in the day, and they do have slaves now because of everything that's going on. But originally, the Yoruba people who took slaves or had slaves eventually turned them into a member of the family, meaning that once they were brought to them or whoever by whatever uh, intermediary intermediary, they were a slave. But as soon as they became into that person's home or wherever, they became a member of the family. So they were no longer slaves. So there's different types of slaves. That's why when I hear people say stuff like, it's everybody's slaves. Well, not everybody's getting hung and lynched. Come on now. We can't go that far. But that's just how some people think. The last thing that I took into account that I found interesting was Aladora churches represented a conscious step towards integrating Yoruba culture and Christian faith. Now that's interesting. I say that's interesting because that gives you an idea of how people went from the Yoruba traditional indigenous religion to Christianity. And I actually wrote an article on that. It's called the Transatlantic Religion Trade, where there was a guy in my hometown, well, not my hometown, but the town near me. He brought it upon himself to take charge in converting the African slaves to Christianity. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave this open for about 5 minutes. Anybody want to jump in? I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna copy this link real quick. If you want to jump in here and say something, you can. Hold on, let me do something real quick. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. About to put it on the floor. All right, I'm about to post a link. Anybody want to jump in here and say anything real quick? It's open for the next few minutes or however long y'all want to sit up here and discuss with me. But let's go. What's up, little vibe? You know what I'm saying? You know, I always come in here and kick that knowledge. Well, while I'm waiting, if anybody wants to jump in here, I'll tell you what book I'm going to talk about next. Pull that up real quick. Like I said, I'm going to do this every single day. Or I don't know every single day, but I do this enough to share what I've read from books. Let's see. All right, so the next book I'm going to do is The Hidden History of the Human Race, Forbidden Archaeology by Michael A. Cramo and Richard L. Thompson. I did part of that already a little bit, but like I said, I'm trying to record all this stuff and have it on my YouTube channel so that way I can always have something to back up what I say. But let me say this real quick. That one will probably be a 2-book. Okay, so the Rose book one will be after that one. But yeah, I'm going to go through all these books, a whole list. I have a whole list on my website, rebirthoftheword.com, of all the books that I personally own, And there's hundreds of books that I have too. So this is not going to happen in 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. This is something I'm going to continue to do. So if you follow me now, 10 years from now, if I'm still breathing, I'm going to still be doing the same thing. So I'm just sharing what I've learned. That's all I do. I don't care about being right. I don't care about being wrong. I just want to know the information that you know, and I just want to know where you got the information. That's why I share what I share. You go through my Twitter account, you can see that everything that I share is from something that I've read personally. And then I'm also going around the United States of America to all these different places and taking pictures and doing articles of local history. I'm basically calling it local history. So be the lookout for that. Nobody joined in, so I'm about to shut this bad boy down, and probably start a space later. If you want me to start a space later on something, just hit me up on the message on this. Y'all take it easy.